During construction of the world's deepest diving pool in Dubai, after engineers had dug a 45-meter shaft into the ground, an unexpected problem stopped them in their tracks. They discovered that a new diving pool called Deepspot had just opened in Poland, and its depth was also 45 meters. That meant Dubai's pool would have to be even deeper, 60 meters, to claim the world record. But making it 15 meters deeper was far easier said than done. On paper, the idea of going from 45 to 60 meters sounded simple, but in practice it posed a huge challenge. Experts calculated that at 60 meters, the pressure from the groundwater would easily push the pool upwards. It was like trying to sink a heavy water bottle in a pond. The bottle would stubbornly float back to the surface because the buoyant force below pushes it up. In other words, the entire pool could pop up out of the ground at any moment. For a moment, Dubai's dream of creating the deepest pool in the world seemed to be falling apart. But then, one bold idea changed everything. Welcome back to GEM TV. When it comes to world records, Dubai is usually the first city that comes to mind. With 425 Guinness World Records to its name, Dubai still reigns supreme in the Middle East, and it's clear that the city's rulers aren't willing to let that crown slip. So when the Crown Prince Sheikh Hamdan bin Rashid Al Maktoum expressed a wish for yet another world record feat, the pressure was on. The result of that vision is what we now know as Deep Dive Dubai. Deep Dive Dubai is not just a pool, it's a completely unique underwater realm. At 197 feet, 60 meters deep, it's now the deepest pool on the planet, holding about 14 million liters of water, enough to fill 6 Olympic swimming pools. But today we're more interested in how it was built. Many engineers consider Dubai's deepest pool nothing short of a miracle of engineering. What challenges did the team encounter during construction? Without wasting any time, let's dive into the details. The first challenge was planning and design. The Crown Prince insisted on a design that would reflect Dubai's cultural heritage. Before the oil boom, Dubai's economy was driven by pearl diving. Professional divers used to plunge into the open sea without scuba gear, searching for shells and pearls to sell. With this history in mind, the designers envisioned the pool as a giant seashell. From a distance, it would look like an open clam on the shoreline, a tribute to Dubai's pearl diving past. Of course, that was just the pool's outer shell. The real challenge was figuring out how to build the pool itself. Architects and engineers from around the world were brought in to brainstorm ideas. The simplest concept was to construct a 45-meter tall building and fill it with water. However, that design had a major flaw. It would indeed create a 45-meter deep pool, but to break the world record, the pool had to be below ground level, not above. Moreover, Dubai is an extremely hot city. An above-ground pool would be prone to the desert heat, making diving conditions uncomfortable. The Crown Prince wanted a pool that would capture attention not just for its design, but for its depth too. In the end, the decision was made. The world's deepest diving pool would have to be excavated underground. Digging the vertical shaft was the next challenge. The engineering team had to excavate a shaft 65 feet, about 20 meters wide, and 147 feet, 45 meters deep. They also needed to build a sturdy perimeter wall, a so-called diaphragm wall, to prevent the tunnel from collapsing. To do this, a special excavator machine was brought in. Using it, they dug a trench 147 feet deep and as wide as a large pillar. In each section, they lowered steel reinforcement cages and filled them with concrete, gradually constructing the diaphragm wall. This painstaking process took more than 2 months. With the diaphragm wall in place, excavation could proceed. The plan was to dig down to the final depth of 45 meters in stages. But after the first 5-meter segment, about 8 meters down, water began to seep in from below. Because the diaphragm wall had been built in pieces, tiny gaps allowed groundwater to leak into the shaft. That water started to flood the tunnel floor, making progress impossible without action. To address this, the engineers installed pumps to continuously remove the water, even as digging continued. For the next 2 years, excavation and pumping went hand in hand. Over this period, they removed some 45,000 tons of earth, soil, sand, and rock from the site. When they finally reached the target depth and stopped digging, they turned off the pumps and, predictably, the tunnel began to refill with water. It became clear that the diaphragm wall itself needed to be completely waterproofed. So for several more months, the team worked on sealing the wall against water. Only after this extensive waterproofing could the pumps finally be turned off for good. By now, more than 3 years had passed since construction began. The team was far behind schedule and every day was precious. Just when they thought they had survived one crisis, a new one appeared. News arrived from Poland. A diving pool called Deepspot near Warsaw had opened, and its depth was 45 meters. This announcement hit the Dubai team like a lightning bolt. All their hard work had been aimed at breaking that record. When the Crown Prince heard about Deepspot, he immediately ordered that the Dubai pool be made even deeper. They had to reclaim the record. But there was a serious problem. The groundwater level was only 8 meters down, extending up to the bottom of the pool. In other words, from 8 meters down to 45 meters, the entire shaft was below the water table and under upward pressure. The engineers had already calculated how much water would be needed to offset this buoyant force for a 45-meter pool. Pushing the depth another 15 meters would dramatically increase the upward pressure, potentially lifting the entire structure, diaphragm wall and all, out of the ground. This threat forced construction to halt as they raced to find a solution. After intensive research, the engineers found an answer. They would indeed extend the shaft by another 15 meters, reaching a total depth of 60 meters. Crucially, the new 15-meter section would have a much smaller diameter, only about half the width of the original shaft. This reduced the area over which the buoyant force could act, significantly lowering the upward push. Additionally, they installed an under-reaming base at the bottom of the shaft, essentially an anchor embedded deep in the earth beneath the tunnel. Just as an anchor keeps a ship from drifting, this under-reaming base ties the entire structure firmly into the ground. With these measures, Deep Dive Dubai's pool depth was successfully extended to 60 meters, and the project was back on track to break the world record. Even then, the challenges were not over. Keeping a 60-meter deep shaft empty is extremely risky. Only the water in the pool can counterbalance the buoyant force. If the hole were left empty too long, the whole thing could float up like a cork. So now the clock was ticking to fill the pool, all 14 million liters of it. But there was a catch. Dubai's water authority could only supply water at a limited rate, and at that pace it would have taken 3 months to fill. To speed things up and meet the deadline, they brought in over 100 water tankers in addition to the authority's supply. Even with that massive effort, the sheer scale of the pool meant it took a full month to fill. It's worth noting that before the water was poured in, the entire underwater sunken city theme had already been set up in the dry pool. Even after filling, new surprises awaited. Some materials and metal parts began to rust or corrode underwater, and a few items, like furniture and props from the sunken city, started to float. The divers had to drill holes in these items and add extra weight so they would stay submerged. After all these final adjustments and finishing touches, Deep Dive Dubai was finally ready for the world. In early 2021, Deep Dive Dubai opened its doors to special guests, and in 2022 it welcomed the general public. The exact cost of this enormous project has been kept secret by the Dubai government. After all, it's a project they consider priceless. What do you think about this incredible feat? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please give the video a like and share it. We'll see you in the next amazing video.